Imagine a pope who dabbled in dark arts, built a talking bronze head that could predict the future, and was rumored to have struck a deal with the devil himself. This isn't the plot of some medieval fantasy. This was Pope Sylvester II. In a time when knowledge was feared as much as it was revered, Sylvester II stood at the crossroads of science and sorcery. He brought mysterious devices to Europe, whispered of ancient secrets, and left behind chilling prophecies that still haunt the Vatican. Was he a genius ahead of his time, or was there something more sinister at play?
Hello, citizen. This content creator is a confirmed conspiracy theorist and has been subject to repeated penalties for spreading controversial rhetoric. Please proceed with caution, trust the government, remain silent. Your compliance is appreciated and, of course, non-negotiable.
Who are you?
My name is Joanna, your info guardian tasked with your monitorization and compliance to community standards. I'm your only friend.
Hey guys, welcome to the 21 CD podcast. If you're looking for a sign that you may be in danger, this is it. As always, I'm your ghost John, here today, but tomorrow is never promised. So protect your kids, protect yourself, and always question the narrative. If you like the show, Google us, follow us everywhere. Please also check out 21cdstudios.com for merch and other stuff. And hey, for those of you who are still waiting for your order, answer your emails because there's a couple of you who I just can't believe how many posters you're buying. I don't know if it's real or not, so I'm just asking you to double check before I mail out the order. Thanks. Let's get to the show. We taught them letters and sciences. A mouthpiece of their god, one Gerbert, took lessons in physics, arithmetic, and music with us, and it was said that he had sold us his soul. Then, the successors of the studious Gerbert, not content with the possession of souls, since the profit one gains thereby are lighter than air, wished to possess bodies also. Everyone at some point or another, when lost in the outlying boundaries of their human existence, when they experience great pain or trauma or fear, they call out into the void with the hope of finding some answer. Typically they ask why or how. Why is this thing happening to them? And how can they make it stop? In that moment, they may think that they are praying. They may be seeking these answers from a divine creator, a warm, spiritual companion, or maybe from some source that they have no idea how to perceive. But the truth remains that when one calls out into the void, it is not only divine righteousness that lies poised to answer back. And it is not only those seeking mercy or respite that might fiend for some edge from the beyond either. Requests for knowledge, money, good health, prosperity, and the like are very rarely gifts given by beings concerned with the battle against evil, sinful practices, the occult, and the purification of the entire planet. The beings that entertain such requests, historically and mythologically, typically do not give freely, but require a great cost. They take something in return. Oftentimes, an unholy bargain is struck, with no way to back out of it. So whether you find yourself screaming for relief, or begging for answers to life's mysteries. Be cautious of who answers back out of the darkness. He who fights with monsters might take care, lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze for long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you.
Nietzsche often described the abyss and nothingness as reflections of the soul's own struggle. When we peer deeply into nothingness, it doesn't just stare back, it consumes us, erasing what we once were. In that emptiness, we lose our sense of self, becoming hollow. But the true monsters, Nietzsche argued, are not lurking in some external void, they are born within us, shaped by this false morality that we've essentially been fed. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche rails against the kind of morality one imposed by society, often under the guise of religion. He saw priests and pastors as prime examples of this hypocrisy, the self-righteous figures who claim to fight evil but end up succumbing to their own inner demons. These so-called moral leaders, especially those exposed in modern scandals, fall from grace, not because of some external evil, but because the very moral systems that they preach are flawed. So, Nietzsche would have said that in their obsession with fighting monsters, they became monsters themselves. Pope Sylvester II, born Gerbert of Aurillac in 946, was no ordinary pope. His life is surrounded by a cloud of intrigue, whispers of dark arts, and of course forbidden knowledge. It's literally almost as if he stepped out of a legend rather than the history books. Rising from humble beginnings as a monk, Sylvester II ascended to the highest office in the Catholic Church at the turn of the first millennium. But his journey was anything but holy in the eyes of many of his contemporaries. This pope wasn't known for piety alone. He was a scholar of the stars, he was a mathematician, and he even introduced Europe to the abacus. This was a guy whose intellect seemed almost otherworldly compared to the people around him. But let's talk about this abacus a little bit, because it's arguably one of the most important inventions/gadgets that he introduced to Europe. The abacus is an ancient calculating tool used for performing arithmetic operations like addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. And it consists of this regular rectangular frame with rods and or wires, each containing beads that can be moved back and forth. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about for those of you just listening. The position of the beads represents numbers, and by manipulating the beads in specific ways, you can perform calculations. It's one of the earliest known tools for computation, dating back thousands of years, and it was used by many ancient civilizations, including the Sumerians, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and Chinese. Pope Sylvester discovered this device while he was visiting Muslim Spain, and this is important. And it just goes to show how even a pope can't turn a blind eye to adopting the beneficial tools of other cultures and religions. But what really set him apart and what shrouds his legacy in mystery were the rumors of sorcery and deals with the devil, right? Some said he had sold his soul to the devil in exchange for knowledge beyond human comprehension. Others say that he had built a bronze head that could answer any question with terrifying accuracy. So, how did a humble monk from rural France gain such unparalleled power and knowledge in an era ruled by superstition? Sylvester II's intellect, paired with the mechanical wonders that he crafted, because this dude was an inventor, he was a visionary, and it left many in medieval Europe both in awe of him and terrified of him. They believed that his advancements in science and technology could only come from one source, and that was the devil, the dark forces. And as strange occurrences followed him around, predictions came true, rumors of demonic pacts began to surface, and it became harder to separate the myth from the man. But who was this guy? He was born in a small, remote region of France, and his early life was, by all accounts, it seemed destined for simplicity. He was part of a very humble family, so he had a humble beginning in this world that was sort of dominated by these feudal lords and the church. But even as a boy, there was something unusual about Gerbert. His sharp mind and his insatiable curiosity set him apart from those around him, and it didn't really take long for people in power to take notice of that. Gerbert's talents caught the eye of local monks, and they quickly whisked him away from the rural simplicity of his village to be educated at the monastery of St. Gerald in Aurillac. And there, surrounded by sacred texts and the quiet hum of religious life, his intellect began to bloom. But it wasn't really enough for this young scholar, because as he was fed information, his hunger for more knowledge and intelligence and information, it just grew and grew. He craved knowledge far beyond what these monasteries could even offer him. He wanted to know the answers to deeper and more complex mysteries of the universe. So, as it sometimes does, fate intervened. When Count Borel of Barcelona, during a visit to the monastery, recognized Gerbert's extraordinary potential and took him under his wing. It propelled him into the heart of Moorish Spain. It was sort of a blend of Christian and Muslim ideals and knowledge, and it was this cultural crossroads where these two religions had very deep impacts. And it was here that Gerbert encountered the advanced mathematics, the astronomy, and scientific knowledge of the Islamic world, things that were so far ahead of Europe at the time that they seemed literally magical, and a lot of it may have been. He studied the works of ancient philosophers and mathematicians, including Ptolemy and Euclid, which had been preserved by Islamic scholars. But it wasn't just books that enchanted him. It was also these mechanical wonders that he was witnessing, these precise instruments and strange devices that could predict the movements of the stars and calculate mathematical issues with uncanny accuracy. It was all of these machines that really got him going. And the world of advanced knowledge really ignited something in Gerbert, something that would make him one of the most feared and revered men of his time. Now, his return to Europe was nothing short of a revelation. He came armed with new knowledge and mysterious skills. Gerbert began to rise through the ranks of both the church and the intellectual elite. But his journey from humble monk to the papal throne was only beginning. And with it, the whispers of dark arts and secrets and forbidden knowledge would soon follow. Scrutiny would follow him for the rest of his life. One of his first major alliances was with Otto I, the Holy Roman Emperor, who recognized Gerbert's potential and brought him to the imperial court. And there, Gerbert's skills were put to use in teaching the emperor's son Otto II, and later Otto III. It was a time of great influence and opportunity, as Gerbert's teachings on arithmetic and astronomy and even the construction of some of these mysterious mechanical devices really dazzled those who were in power. The court had literally never seen anything like this. So his introduction of the abacus and the use of Arabic numerals, it really revolutionized the way calculations were done, something that seemed almost otherworldly in an era of superstition. But, as you can imagine, not everybody was pleased with his rise. as Gerbert ascended the ranks, all these rumors began to swirl. Whispers of how he could have gained such knowledge started to take on these darker tones. So was it divine inspiration, or had Gerbert tapped into something far more dangerous? His time in Moorish Spain, surrounded by all of this strange knowledge from the East, fueled those rumors, and many began to wonder if he had struck a deal with the devil himself to gain such insight. And those who envied his rise were more than happy to spread tales of this kind. But despite the rumors, Gerbert's star continued to ascend, and he did become Archbishop of Reims. It was in this role, though, that Gerbert found himself at the center of bitter disputes between factions within the church, battling over this papal authority and the direction of Christendom itself, because this was a time of there wasn't a whole lot of outside wars going on, and so they were warring with themselves. Gerbert's influence, however, continued to grow, and it was during this period that he sort of deepened his bond with Otto III, who was, of course, destined to become one of his closest allies and emperor someday. With his support, Gerbert's path to the papacy was essentially set, and in 999 he was elected pope and took the name Sylvester II. This was a deliberate nod to the first Pope Sylvester, who had served under Constantine the Great. And this symbolic choice marked Gerbert's intention to restore, essentially, the authority of the church in the face of the coming millennium, a time when many believed that the world was actually on the brink of apocalypse. And his papacy coincided with apocalyptic fears as well, as the year 1000 approached, and the legends of his dealings with dark forces intensified. People really began to think that he was some dark lord, some magician, somebody compromised by the devil, and now he was the Pope. So how had this simple monk ascended to such heights, after all? How had he acquired the knowledge that he did, the knowledge that bordered on the mystical? The more powerful that Sylvester II became, the more his past was scrutinized. There were whispers of secret books that he might have, deals with demons that he might have done, and as before, these strange robots that people, these automatons, if you will, that people knew he had, also were horrifying, because it looked like this dude was playing God. And it was reputed that he had a pact with a female demon called Meridiana, and she had appeared after he had basically been rejected by a woman that Sylvester II, Gerbert, was in love with. After this rejection, essentially, Meridiana, this demon, helped him ascend to the papal throne. There's another legend that says that he won the papacy while playing a game of dice with the devil. So as Pope Sylvester II, he would face not just the challenges of leading the church, which was in a very tumultuous time, but also the growing fear that his power came from somewhere far darker than divine providence, because that's what people were saying, right? And as the millennium drew closer, people began to wonder, was he a pope chosen by God, or something way worse? And the fact of the matter is, the truth about his life and how it would end, it only adds to the legend of Pope Sylvester II, because it really does seem like there was something more going on. So as we said, as he took his place on the papal throne in 999, which is just, if you flip it upside down, is 666, the world stood at the brink of apocalyptic fear. They were about to lose their minds, and Europe was gripped with this superstition, and the looming year 1000 filled many with fears and dread and horror, and as similar to Y2K. And because prophecies were foretelling the end of days in the year 1000. But Sylvester, being a man of reason and science, didn't really seem to share the masses' fear, which only added to his mystique, right? Instead, his focus was on strengthening the church, reforming its practices, and consolidating power. Even as he attempted to bring order to this fractured church, people were sort of doubting him in his very halls. The rumors of his alleged pact with the devil surfaced all the time, constantly. And every time the stories came up, they just got worse and worse. Now that he was Pope, people believed that he secured his place not through divine favor, but through forbidden, arcane means. And the core of this legend stems from his early years as a scholar. After leaving his monastery in Aurillac, Gerbert traveled to the Iberian Peninsula, where he was exposed to all this advanced scientific knowledge preserved and expanded upon by Muslim scholars in what is modern day Spain now. And he learned about all of these things, including these Arabic numerals, the concept of zero, things that were revolutionary and almost magical to these Europeans at the time. But let's combine the details from legend, myth, and forgotten texts that go deeper into this story. It goes that Gerbert's insatiable curiosity pushed him beyond the boundaries of what was considered safe or holy. In these cities where he went to learn, he encountered not just scholars, but also these foretellings of secret libraries, hidden rooms that were filled with ancient texts of forbidden wisdom. These texts were said to contain the works of Hermes Trismegistus, the Necronomicon, and even lost knowledge from Solomon's Key. These were all grimoires that allegedly hold the secrets of controlling supernatural forces. To access them, however, Gerbert needed more than just scholarly ambition, right? He would have had to pursue the arcane. And according to the legend, it was during this time that he learned of a secret ritual, one that could summon a powerful entity who would essentially unlock these ancient mysteries. Some accounts suggest that this ritual took place in the caves of Toledo, which is a city renowned for its dark reputation as a sort of center of occult knowledge. These caves were said to house an ancient portal, a place where the veil between the earthly realm and hell was essentially thinner. So, one night, under the cover of darkness, Gerbert descended into the depths of the caves, and he had this knowledge from the ancient texts that he had studied. And there, deep within the earth, he performed these forbidden rites, and wouldn't you know it, a figure appeared, the devil, or maybe one of his chief demons. And it was said that this was no horned beast with a pitchfork, but something far more insidious. It was an entity cloaked in shadow, with eyes that seemed to hold the knowledge of ages, piercing through the darkness. The demon's voice was cold and sharp, and it echoed in the chamber, offering what Gerbert had so long sought: unlimited knowledge. But as is always the case in these stories, the price, of course, was his soul. Now, this pact, according to legend, was simple. Gerbert would receive all the knowledge he desired, knowledge that would not only make him the greatest scholar of his age, but would also grant him power and influence beyond what any monk could imagine, right? And in return, when his time came, the devil would claim his soul. This demon supposedly handed Gerbert a grimoire filled with instructions on how to build some of these complex mechanical devices and read the stars with precision that no human had yet achieved. And some versions of the story say the grimoire also contained the secret of crafting the bronze head that was so popularly attached to Sylvester II's image. It was this device that could essentially answer any question asked of it. And this head would whisper truths from the future that would allow Gerbert to sort of navigate the dangerous waters of political and ecclesiastical power that were swarming all around him at all times. Gerbert, of course, was blinded by ambition, so he took the deal, and therefore his destiny was sealed. And taking all this forbidden knowledge and these new tools, Gerbert returned to Europe, where his rise was meteoric. He impressed everybody, emperors and scholars, and manipulated church politics with this sort of ease that seemed honestly supernatural. And many people said that that's exactly how it appeared. And with the help of this bronze head, Gerbert carefully orchestrated his ascent, using his predictions to gain favor and avoid missteps along the way that would have been fatal in this sort of ruthless political landscape that he was operating in. Of course, something like this, there's going to be signs that may be subtle at first and more intense later on, but there were signs that something wasn't right. And the mechanical devices that he was creating were far too perfect. They were too. They seemed too advanced for their time. And maybe this is stemming from people just, being horrified at things that they had never seen before. But we got to think now too, like, what would push us to the point of being like, whoa, that's way too technological for the time. That's crazy. Like, is there anything that could surprise us anymore, like in this modern age? So what would have surprised somebody back then in that same way, right? It must have been magnificent. That's just my thinking anyway. Combined with this head and his astrological predictions being spot on almost all the time, the fact that he could just ask this piece of tech questions about life and power and all that kind of stuff, and it could answer all day long, but it could never answer any questions about death. That's kind of weird, right? It was said that it foretold Gerbert's rise to the papacy, but remained silent whenever he asked about his own fate. As the end of his life drew near, the legends grew darker. According to some, the bronze head warned Gerbert that his soul was about to be claimed by the devil, but it did not reveal when or where. Gerbert, now Pope Sylvester II, of course, was horrified at this because obviously when you make the deal, you probably aren't thinking about when the deal is up. You're just thinking about all the stuff along the way. So now the clock is almost up, and Sylvester II is afraid. His knowledge, which was once his greatest gift, was now the curse that was about to claim him. And the chilling climax of the story revolves around this prophecy of his death. The devil had told Gerbert that he would die in Jerusalem, and this was a cryptic prediction that had haunted him. So, confident that he could avoid this fate by never traveling to the Holy Land, Sylvester felt safe. But as his health began to fail, he found himself residing in the Basilica of Santa Croce in Jerusalem, the Holy Cross of Jerusalem in Rome. So, in a cruel twist of fate, this was the Jerusalem where the devil would come to claim his soul. And as the legend goes, when Sylvester realized that the prophecy had come true, he confessed his pact with the devil to his closest attendants, and he begged for forgiveness and ordered that his body be mutilated after death as a sign of his repentance. Some claim that at the moment of his death, unnatural phenomena were witnessed. Things like strange winds howling through the basilica, there were shadows creeping all over the walls, and that his tombstone even trembled. After his death in 1003, the rumors did not fade. It was said that Sylvester's tomb would sweat or produce moisture whenever a pope was about to die, and this was said to be a final reminder of the unholy bargain that he had struck in the caves of Toledo. Pretty wild stuff. I want to talk a little bit more about this bronze head because to me, this not only seemed like very in the realm of AI, which I just find fascinating in the era of medieval times. Like that, it's just it feels like it's AI in medieval times, right? But it's obviously probably something demonic or evil in a different, more spiritual way, which, I mean, AI could be argued to be that as well. But so supposedly he had created this bronze automaton. It was this head, like we've already mentioned, and some people say that it could answer any questions, and other people say that it could only answer yes or no questions about the future. So like you could ask anything and it would say yes or no, but it wouldn't really describe a whole lot in great detail. It was said that this head could reveal truths hidden from ordinary men, and that Sylvester used it to maintain power by foreseeing political threats and basically thereby guiding the fate of the church. Some accounts even claim that the bronze head had warned Sylvester of his own death, though it could not tell him when or where it would happen. The existence of such a device blurred the lines between Sylvester's scientific brilliance and the occult. It really adds to the suspicion that maybe there was more going on. And this head stands as one of the most fascinating and perplexing elements of medieval lore, obviously, because you find this strange combination of science and sorcery that it makes you think of some kind of like evil scientist in a weird way, but it's in the medieval ages. Like, is this dude a wizard or what? Like, that's you're kind of getting these fanciful fantastical images of who this pope really was, but it appears that that's what was going on. We got Gandalf out here just building robots and taking over the papacy. Pretty crazy stuff. According to the legends, though, Gerbert did not craft this head alone. The creation of this mechanical marvel was said to have been guided by his access to these secret texts and forbidden knowledge, which he acquired during his time in Moorish Spain. It was there that he was exposed to the works of Arabic scholars, like we already said, and they sort of preserved and expanded upon some of the ancient Greek sciences. So while he was learning about all these ancient Greek topics, and he was going into depth on these geometrical studies and the studies of mechanics and all that kind of stuff, which were things basically unknown in Europe at the time, he was also learning how to build these robots, because he kept having this desire for deeper and deeper understanding and more complex tech, essentially. So he found himself in possession of many strange and occult manuscripts, and these were books that contained more than just scientific theories. So one of these manuscripts was allegedly based on the Key of Solomon, which is this ancient grimoire, for people that don't know, that described rituals for summoning and controlling supernatural entities. Another was the Hermetic Corpus, text attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a legendary figure believed to have some kind of divine wisdom. And through these texts, Gerbert is said to have learned the secrets of creating an automaton, a robot, a little buddy who just functions on his own. In this case, a talking bronze head, and it could answer his questions somehow. But, like we said, the creation of this head was not just some kind of act of random and excellent craftsmanship. The story suggests that Gerbert, following some arcane instructions from these manuscripts, was able to somehow infuse the head with a mysterious life force, perhaps calling upon celestial or infernal energies. Some even claim that he consulted a demon or performed occult rituals to breathe this power into the head. Whether these rituals were genuine or symbolic of, this sort of intricate science that he knew, they were enough to sow the seeds of suspicion in the minds of his contemporaries. And honestly, I think you could enter into the realm of, did he find in this land that he went to learn all this weird stuff in, did he find some ancient tech while he was collecting all these things and getting to know all these weird people and learning from all these strange sources? Did he come into contact with something otherworldly, some kind of ancient technology? And he brought that back to Europe with him. You know, people talk about how things go missing, like the Ark of the Covenant, or, you know, the Holy Grail, all that kind of stuff. The spear that pierced Christ's side, Noah's Ark. Like, where did all this stuff go? Not everybody is recording when they find this kind of stuff. Smart people wouldn't record finding something of great power and technology. It's possible he did. He had some incredible connections. It is said that the head, there was a mechanism inside it that was based on celestial calculations, which allowed it to predict future events with incredible accuracy. Some accounts suggest that the head was attuned to the stars, which Gerbert studied extensively. Through his knowledge of astrology and the movement of the planets, he might have constructed the head to act as a kind of early computer, calculating outcomes based on mathematical probabilities, which is just absolutely insane. However, the people of the time did not see the bronze head as a product of science. They didn't know what a computer was, so this looked pretty sus. To them, it was definitely supernatural, a device that was put together with otherworldly powers, and this head's ability to foresee the future made it an object of great fear. Sylvester used the head to guide his actions, asking it questions about all sorts of things, ranging even to military strategies, allegedly. And I think it's pretty funny that Sylvester died while essentially planning what would be the First Crusade. So he was gonna go back to this mystical land for some reason. You know, when he's talking about consolidating power and all this kind of stuff, he's about to start a crusade. He didn't end up being able to make that happen. He died before it happened, but isn't that kind of crazy? The head's prophetic ability became most famous for supposedly predicting Gerbert's own rise to Pope. It was said that he asked the bronze head whether he would ever become Pope, and the head responded affirmatively. It nodded with great gusto. And to those around him, similar to the way that politics look these days, that rise seemed a little bit too suspicious, too smooth, too calculated, as if there sort of was some kind of unfair advantage over his rivals. Of course, that was attributed to this deal with the devil and these robots that Pope Sylvester II was allegedly constructing with demonic minions. Of course, we know the head couldn't really answer any questions about Sylvester II's death. As the legend goes, Sylvester II's death was surrounded by all sorts of ominous signs. After Sylvester's death, of course, wouldn't you know it, the bronze head just simply vanished. Some speculate that it was buried with him, others say it was destroyed. Personally, I think it was probably swooped up by the Catholic Church and hidden within the archives, and that's where all sorts of other strange technology and bizarre things that we're not allowed to know about are being held. But, of course, the legend of the bronze head lives on, and there's many tales of mechanical prophecy and inspired generations of alchemists that have their own tales following in the same footsteps as Sylvester II, dabbling in this sort of robotics and AI weird little niche corner of reality. And in the centuries that followed, other great minds like Roger Bacon and Albertus Magnus, they also tried to do the same sort of stuff that Sylvester II was doing, constructing their own versions of talking heads and automata that could essentially simulate life and do things that seemed impossible. So, you tell me, has AI sort of had its grips on this world for longer than we think, or are these just innocent robots that people are getting, that people of the time were just super afraid of? Was there some kind of tech that was still in the earth in these medieval ages that appeared like magic, that seemed way too advanced for its time, that somehow just crept through the cracks and made it to this dark time period, known as the Dark Ages, and inspired a lot of the legends of wizards and witches and these magical things in the time. There's a lot of talk of some fantastical stuff during the medieval ages. Was this one of those things? A little bit more evidence that there was something stranger going on back then? So in the year 1003, Pope Sylvester II, he's dying in this church that bears the name of Jerusalem, realizing that he can't escape this fate. And on his deathbed, it's said that he confessed to his alleged pact with dark forces and begged for forgiveness, pleading with those around him to dismember his body after his death as a sign of repentance, and basically just scatter his pieces across the city. And if you're wondering, Sylvester's death did not mark the apocalypse as many had feared. If it did, we're all just products of this new universe, and this is ancient mythology, I guess, or stories from a different branch of the meta. But after the death of Pope Sylvester II in 1003, a strange sort of silence fell over his legacy. All the records of his discoveries, most of them anyway, especially the stranger ones, his writings, the tools that he had used to sort of reshape the intellectual landscape that he was operating in, his robotics, all that sort of stuff just vanished into thin air. And there was nothing really left of all of that intense knowledge and his laboratory and all of his writings and everything that he had learned, all this strange stuff he had taken from this other land. It was all gone. It just disappeared. So for a man who had brought such revolutionary knowledge to Europe, so probably for the first time, the disappearance of all that is almost more suspicious than his life itself. There were no surviving examples of any of his famous machines. Not even like fragments or parts that could point to how they could have been constructed. It's literally as if someone deliberately erased his legacy, really making sure that the secrets of his inventions would remain buried, hidden forever, just sort of sleeping in ambiguity. Some have speculated that these machines were destroyed by the church, of course, because they were fearful of the occult rumors that continued to cling to Sylvester II's name. This association with sorcery and the devil had really tainted his reputation among certain religious factions, and it's possible that in the aftermath of his death, the church wanted to distance itself from this guy and his scientific achievements. So by destroying the devices, they could erase the, I guess you could say, uncomfortable memory of a pope who dabbled in knowledge that many believed was forbidden. Of course, most of us are a little more speculative than that and would suggest that his inventions were intentionally hidden away and are sealed in the Vatican's basement in their secret archives, where they have a whole vast collection of documents and relics that they've been guarding for centuries. It's said that only a select few ever have access to these archives, and that they hold some of the most dangerous and controversial records in history. Knowledge that's very important to the narrative, very important to the real history of humanity. If Sylvester's machines were indeed stored there, they have been kept from the world's eyes for over 1,000 years now. And if you're on the team that, well, the disappearance of his writings is even more strange than the disappearance of his machines were probably looted and whisked away and destroyed and all that kind of stuff. But wouldn't his writings have been of monumental importance? You would think, because as a scholar, he was known to have written extensively on subjects that were revolutionary for the time. This is mentioned over and over again in research. He introduced these Arabic numerals to Europe. He developed new methods of calculation. He introduced the abacus, and he penned works that were important in the realms of astronomy and mechanics. These texts, you think, would have survived in the libraries of medieval Europe, and they would have been copied, and they would have been studied by the other scholars who followed in his footsteps. But few of these writings even exist today. Most of them have just vanished, leaving behind only these sort of vague references to his works in the writings of others. So how could the intellectual contributions of a man like this, a prominent figure in science, to be wiped away so completely? Reminds me a lot of somebody else who went through very similar treatment, known as Nikola Tesla. But you see that kind of stuff when you research history. You see that every now and then those people who just seem to step out of bounds a little bit and achieve some knowledge of the narrative or of something that just doesn't line up with the way that they've been told it really is. And those people usually meet a demise very similar to this. All sorts of weird stories swirl around you for some reason, and then you die mysteriously, and then all of your stuff disappears. And that's usually how you know that you've got somebody who is on to something. So am I going to say that he made a deal with the devil? Maybe. That was his world. He dealt with devils and angels and deeply religious matters, right? But I think it's also possible he found something in Spain and he found something in some other part of the world at that time that was incredible, and he brought it to Europe with him. Some sort of tech or some sort of knowledge that may have been attained in other than simply making a deal with the devil methods. Even the records of his papacy are unusually sparse. While we know that he held the position during one of the most critical moments in medieval history, as the year 1000 approached and apocalyptic fears were gripping Europe, much of his time as pope has just simply faded into ambiguity. Unlike other popes whose deeds were carefully chronicled by church historians, the account of Sylvester II's reign seems incomplete, as if somebody just deliberately censored or erased parts of his story. The gap in the historical record adds to the mystery, right? Why was this guy, a man of such importance, not better remembered by the church that he led? Some have suggested that his association with dark powers was just way too troubling for future generations to accept, and that the church, concerned with its image, chose to just simply bury his legacy, along with all of his writings and inventions. Of course, we know they stole it, but one of the most enduring legends surrounding Sylvester II is also tied to his tomb, which we mentioned a little bit earlier, which is located in the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. And it's said that his tomb holds an unnatural sort of power, and there's like an eerie presence that continues to manifest even in death. According to the legend, his tomb will begin to sweat. It'll become covered in moisture whenever a pope is about to die. And this strange phenomenon has been reported over the centuries. And while there's really no scientific explanation for this supposed sweating of his tomb, it has only added to the whole legend involving Sylvester II. Like, what could explain something like that? We can almost say that Pope Sylvester II himself has disappeared. And with the complete removal of all of his works, much of his legacy, his inventions, the story of him being just shredded to pieces and left for people like me to just sort of assemble and try to make sense of, it does seem like this is a guy who was intentionally removed from the record. There's a conspiracy here. There's a lot that hints at things deeper, things darker. So whether it was the church that wanted to erase his influence, or Sylvester himself who hid his knowledge from the world, maybe he hid everything. The fact remains that his contributions have been lost to time. We simply don't know everything that he knew. The few scraps that remain are told about in stories and podcasts like this. It's peculiar, however, how many years into the future, the Catholic Church seemed to have developed a very similar technology to the bronze head of Sylvester II. This tech is known today as the Chronovisor. The Chronovisor is said to be this device that allows its users to view past and future events, almost like a window into different points in time. According to the legend, it was developed in the 1950s by a team of scientists working in secret within the Vatican, led by a man named Father Pellegrino Ernetti. And he was a Benedictine monk with a background in physics and music theory, similar to Pope Sylvester II. Ernetti claimed that the Chronovisor could capture events from the distant past, and in some accounts, even glimpse the future. The Chronovisor allegedly worked by tuning into the residual electromagnetic radiation left behind by all historical events. And according to Father Ernetti, all human actions, thoughts, and events leave traces of their energy imprinted on the fabric of the universe. And the Chronovisor could pick up these energy signatures, essentially. By manipulating this technology, the machine could basically replay these events kind of like a TV. Boy, that sounds a lot like Sylvester II's automaton head, doesn't it? Kind of doing the same thing, just a little more advanced in technology now. Now we've got a screen, now you can visualize it, instead of just have a conversation about it, instead of just ask it what's going to happen, it'll show you what's going to happen. I don't know. That's kind of a weird coincidence, guys. Pretty weird stuff, right? It makes us really wonder what else we're not being told. What secrets did Sylvester take to the grave, for instance? What did he know that he didn't say anything about? Were his inventions truly destroyed, or are they still hidden somewhere in the shadows of the Vatican's secret vaults, just sort of waiting to be rediscovered? And why, even now, does the very mention of his name send these proverbial shivers down the spines of those who study his life or are a part of his church? Perhaps it is because, in the case of Pope Sylvester II, the truth is just way stranger and more dangerous than we're even ready to accept. Perhaps what Sylvester II actually knew could unravel the very narrative itself. Thanks for tuning in to the 21st Century Dystopian Podcast. Don't drink the water and question it.